Now, here to weigh in is Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, who is also a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. Welcome.
Hey, thanks. Good to have you. Good having you.
All right. Well, Congressman, I want to get your opinion as an acting member of the National Guard. And Sean, I want you to weigh in as well. You served in the Navy. From my perspective, it seems like Captain Cozier is a hero and he did the right thing to take care of his crew. What is your take? Is that right? Is he a hero?
Yeah, Sean's a Navy guy here, but look, as a commander, here's what you have to take into mind. The most important thing is the mission for your country, but also your men and women, the men and women under your command. I think if this was the very first thing that the commander did was to release this letter and go public, then obviously he would have done the wrong thing. But if he was trying to get this message out, look, my men are in danger. We have 100-some cases of COVID-19. They're up to 200-some now. Then I think there's a point at which if you're not putting national defense in jeopardy, you have to put your men's lives above, even your own career. And frankly, in the Air Force, there are instances like this in the past few decades where we see commanders that are willing to put their careers on the line for their men. And those are the people that we look at as heroes now.
Yeah, I would just say, first of all, obviously any opinions I express are my own and not condoned by the Department of the Navy or the Department of Defense. That being said, I think that the captain did the right thing. He probably did it in the wrong way, meaning that I agree with Congressman Kinzinger that you always have to put your people first and foremost. That's the actual job of what a commander does. But we have a chain of command, and it needs to be followed. And the question that's going to come down, and I think it's going to be handled through an investigation, is whether or not he followed the chain of command or whether he went outside that chain of command and let people know about this. Because on the ship that he's on is a two-star admiral. And the question is, did he go through that two-star to tell him his concerns, or did he go around the two-star admiral that was on the ship and go straight up and he put 20 to 30 people on the CC line? And the question is, by doing that, you not only undermine the chain of command, which is something that Congressman Kinzinger mentioned, but I think you also tell the rest of the world, hey, this ship that we're operating in a very important place is not necessarily at the highest capacity that we need it to be at. And that's a concerning thing for national security.
And now President Trump jumping in and saying he might get involved, that it's that level. My question is that his place, Congressman Kinzinger and Sean, I'd love for you to weigh in too. Is that the place of the president to jump into something like this and give his word or change things up?
Well, ultimately, the president is the commander-in-chief, so if he does that, it's his right to do it. I would say that this is probably best left to an investigation, what knew what and when. The president could then take the reviews and the findings and make a decision on that. But if he wants to get involved, he has absolutely every right to do that. This is, again, a commander of a very important asset to the United States. This is now a very public thing. And I think there's a lot we simply don't know that still needs to come out. What I do get bothered by is when you see people in other parts of the media that immediately jump on whatever side is against whatever the position of the president of the United States is without having any idea, the rules or the procedures involved in military. And you see too much of that right now.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that that's absolutely right. We got to remember that there's probably a lot more to this, and I think that whatever position the president takes, everyone in the media is immediately against. The president has a right to weigh in, as you said. He is the commander-in-chief. I think this is the interesting thing I think that's so fascinating about this is you remember, number one, the Secretary of Navy that existed before Spencer was relieved for not following the chain of command. And then you have Maudley comes in, relieves the commander of the Roosevelt for not following the chain of command, then criticizes him for saying something which he, quote, says, he knew to be leaked. Then goes and speaks very frankly to 4,000 sailors and doesn't think that that in itself is going to be leaked. It's amazing how sort of, as they always say, history repeats itself. Congressman, let me ask you a different question. Right now, when we're talking about the coronavirus, I see a lot of folks on the sidelines and a lot of folks in the media make these comparisons about our fight against the pandemic to war, to military actions, how many people died in this battle, how we're doing compared to this outpost. Do you think that using that kind of language is appropriate?
I don't know if it's inappropriate. I just don't think it's accurate. I mean, I have used some analogy similar. We're basically saying this is going to be a thing that defines our generation, like World War II defined the generation of my grandparents. But it's not the same thing. You think of World War II, multiple years. You were talking about sending an entire generation off to fight. You were talking at that time mostly men. But this is a moment for our country where we can be united. It is a moment where we can make great sacrifices and see what's important. And it's not always the hustle bustle of a busy day.
But here's the thing. You are a war veteran. You went over and fought in a war. And in a war, you're fighting an enemy, right? Someone has either attacked you or you're being the aggressor. But at the end of the day, you have an enemy that you are fighting. People are dying, fighting for this country in particular. There's no question. I think you're absolutely right. We are facing this invisible enemy that attacked us. But it is not an act of war. And the question is, do you think, as somebody that actually went there and fought for this country, do you think is it appropriate for people to be using these analogies, comparing what we're doing now to fight this invisible enemy with the sacrifice that so many people made actually defending this country?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. I don't think so, because again, it's people are doing heroic things now and facing a disease and going into work. But again, I don't think there is much that can compare to a young man or a woman going overseas, leaving their loved ones, and literally putting their lives on the line. And by the way, the men and women of this military are fierce. They are they're ready to go to war to defend this country. What I get tired of, this may be a slightly separate thing, but when I hear people talk about our boys and girls in the military or how we have to coddle the military and protect them, yeah, we need to give them everything they need to be safe to kill America's enemies. That is the job of the military.
Well said. Thank you for your service. I hope you stay safe.